I am Curran Bhatia, speaking with Herman Caicedo. He is the co-trainer for Chris Colbert, trainer of Luis Ortiz. We've seen him with some great fighters. Herman, how's everything going?
Really nice. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I wanted to ask you about, we just saw Chris Colbert in the ring. We know everything he's achieved up to this point. He got his record up to 16-0, but obviously he took his first loss against Hector Garcia. So how would you describe what happened there in the ring on Saturday night for Chris Colbert?
Well, I think it was a combination of probably a few things. But if I had to put, a very simple finger on it, I think Chris had a horrible night, unfortunately. Hector had a great night. And a southpaw makes it very difficult for anybody to just, last minute, you don't prepare for one. It's you're fighting a righty for a world title, and then all of a sudden you're fighting a lefty with less than, 2.5, 3 weeks to go, right? So that's not always a great combination. Something that, no one in his camp, Chris included, or even myself, to be very honest with you, thought that it would be an issue because of Chris's ability to adapt either left or right. But unfortunately, like I said, that night, Hector had a great night, stayed very focused, took hella shots. And just, kind of kept coming, kept pressing. And that's the worst kind of southpaw, is the one that won't stop coming and fundamentally sound. Don't got to be fancy, 1, 2, and 3, and just keep coming. That'll make the best of them scramble, So yeah, it was almost a perfect recipe for disaster.
Was it the short notice replacement? Did that cause mentally at all? Did that cause Colbert to kind of overlook Garcia a little bit?
We're in the COVID times, right? So anything can happen with a fight, and that's exactly what happened with Chris's fight for the title. Something he was very excited about, something he was looking forward to for even before he debuted as a professional, and then it falls out, and then they tell you you're fighting, somebody that is not as good, quote unquote, but not as good because he's not the world champion, but not because he wasn't good. And everyone acknowledged that the kid was good, maybe even better than the world champion as far as, fundamentals and punching power as well, for sure. But, who's to say whether it, affected him? I think it did. I think, Chris is a phenomenal self-motivator, a phenomenal, confident young man, and he's no punk, so wasn't going to back down from a guy that wants to fight, right? So I think it was just like a perfect storm of a lot of things, and unfortunately, it culminated to that night, and unfortunately, Chris lost. And they say the better man won, right? That's a saying that's said.
Yeah.
But Hector is no way the better fighter than Chris. Chris is a superior fighter just that night. It takes just a little bit off, and then, the rest is history, as they say.
Hector Garcia certainly was the better fighter that night. Round 7, Chris Colbert did get dropped. I'm sure you were watching this from the corner. What were your thoughts? What did you see in that knockdown? What did Colbert do wrong to get dropped there for the first time in his professional career?
Well, he walked right straight forward. He attacked in a straight line right down the center, and Hector did a nice job of slipping the attack and come back with a good straight left hand. And it was a flash knockdown. I don't think it was a knockdown that hurt him. It was definitely a flash knockdown. Hector was also privy to a little bit of a weight advantage. Chris is a small 130. Not that Hector was a big 130 either, but a little bigger. And I think just Chris got a little bit desperate maybe by then already. Was understanding that the fight was slipping away, and got a little bit desperate and walked into a straight left hand from Hector's counter, and just quick flash knockdown. He got right up and he wasn't hurt. Chris got a phenomenal chin. There's no question of his heart. There's no question of his skill. And you know, up until then, it was still us in the corner considering, you know, a close fight up until that knockdown. And then it was just, you know, you need a knockout after that.
We heard you on the broadcast speaking to Chris in the corner. You mentioned that at the last round, he needed a knockout to win. You also told him at points to walk him down this round. It didn't seem like he was able to execute on that advice. It seemed like he was walking back most of the fight. Didn't seem to have the pop. Was there a certain point where you said we have to go to plan B? And if so, was there a plan B?
Well, what happened was Chris gave away, for whatever reason, a few rounds early, earmuffs on and trying to walk him down and match power to power, and tried to be the tougher, rougher guy. And I think those early rounds took a little toll on his physicality and took a little toll on you know, on the overall wear and tear of what the fight was going to be. So the plan B really wasn't a plan B because there was always just a plan A to fight this last minute opponent, Southpaw. And unfortunately, I couldn't have, not that I didn't have, I just couldn't have the last few weeks when the fight fell out and the new opponent was mentioned. Chris went back to New York at that point and finished out camp in New York. You know, maybe a little bit disappointed that all that happened. Then he kind of went home for the support system at home, and camp was a little bit, you know, getting to him as far as, you know, because just camps in general will wear a fighter a little bit. So he went home. And so we really didn't have, him and I, any conversations as to how to prepare for a Southpaw. And his coach in New York, I'm sure, probably did go over, you know, some of the fundamentals because he was telling him in the corner some of the right things to do versus a Southpaw. And Chris is very talented, so I'm sure he was probably going in his sequence like a quarterback does progressions. I think Chris was probably doing his version of progressions before, hey, okay, let's just go to what the coaches are saying, right? He's a very independent thinker. He's a very talented and independent fighter as well. One of those guys that you can just kind of wind up and let go, right? And just say, hey, go do what you got to do. Relies a lot on his instinct and his speed and his skill. But, you know, when you give away some rounds like that, in my opinion, when you give away some rounds like that early on to clearly a tough, rough guy, that's what he was, a tough, rough guy. You know, over a course of a 12-round fight, it's gonna beat you up a little bit to the point where when you need that rough last 2 rounds to answer your question, which is what he needed. And I don't think it was going to win the fight. Clearly, the scorecards indicated those last 2 rounds, had he won them, even if he knocked them down in each round, he probably still wouldn't have won the fight. But in my opinion, maybe would have just, for his personal, you know, maybe finished a little bit stronger and whatnot. But, you know, then there's the flip side to that, which I agree with also, which is, you know, if you are a little bit beat up throughout this 10-round fight, you took a lot of hooks from the Southpaw, you know, on the side and behind the ear, just little peppering hooks all night that I'm sure did the damage to the point where he just kind of said, okay, 11-12, I already lost. I'm not gonna just get beat up for, you know, for the crowd's sake. Let's call it. Like I said, he's an independent thinker. He's a smart fighter, and probably, you know, I'm pro finish. You know, I'm pro, you know, go out on your shield type of coach. But at the end of the day, I do sympathize with that thinking, which is, okay, already lost this fight in his head, maybe, and why go out and sustain any more damage in 11-12, which is when you're already tired, let's say, or you're beat up, or you're physically not as capable as you were, you can get hurt at that point. So I do agree with his decision to, you know, box 11-12 or move 11-12, and, you know, wasn't going to make a difference. He's an exciting fighter. He's the money side, even as a loser. If they do have a rematch, he'll still be the A side, I believe, and he'll still be the money guy. Hector's not going to draw anything. So nothing away from Hector, obviously, you know, but it's just the reality of our business and our sport, right? The guy there is Chris Colbert.
It's always interesting to see how a fighter deals with their first professional loss. We've seen fighters deal with it different ways. You touched upon the rematch. Where would you like to see Chris Colbert go from here? And do you want to see a rematch?
Well, you know, Chris is a proud fighter, very proud. He has ego when it comes to his fighting. So I would assume that Chris would want a rematch. And, if in fact that's the case, I don't see it going the same way, because Chris has fought rough and tough guys like that. He beat my guy, Jamie Arboleda, who I trained to try and do what Hector was able to do, because unfortunately that's the blueprint. To beat a guy like Chris Colbert is you got to do what Hector did. But Chris didn't allow Jamie to do that to him, my kid. And he went almost the distance and knocked out Jamie in the 11th round. And I can tell you for a fact that Jamie's a tougher, harder puncher than Hector Garcia is, right? He's a devastating, and he's, 5'10", 5'11". So Chris has already beaten that type of match and beaten that pressure kind of guy. The rematch, I know for a fact Hector's not going to win a rematch. Maybe Hector doesn't do it. Maybe Hector moves on, and maybe Hector realizes that was just that one night, stars aligning, and they do happen. And he got the better of him. So, unless they offer him a ton of money that he won't make fighting somewhere else, I don't know that a rematch necessarily will happen. But I don't see, if it does happen, Chris losing that.
Chris certainly taking the classy approach in defeat, and I'm sure we're going to see him back again. I wanted to ask you about another fighter that you work with and train, Luis Ortiz.
I want to touch base on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
When you say Chris is the classy approach, he's got a big mouth. He'll tell you himself, right? But he is the kindest, gentlest human being. I met Chris many years ago when he was a young kid. He was maybe 18 years old. And I asked him to help me, and I asked his coach at the time to see if he would help me prepare for a title fight with a bantamweight I have that was fighting against Rashid Warren, Juan Carlos Payano. And he came down and he stayed about 6 weeks, and he did all the work. And then, I'm going to pay him for the work. And he refused the money. He didn't want the money at all. He didn't want a penny. And this was a kid at the time that was maybe 1-0. He was just debuting, if that. And he needed the money. Not only did he wasn't where he's at now, where he probably has a couple dollars. He was, he was struggling. He didn't want the money. We argued back and forth. He refused to take the money. He came back for the rematch and helped me again and did the same thing. And the reasoning was that he really took to Juan Carlos. He took to the gym and the guys, and he felt at home there. We made him feel at home. It was, it was just like he really felt like a second home from New York, right? That we took good care of him, etc. Nobody does that. Not a single person does that. And it was money. The first time around was a few thousand. For the rematch was probably more. And he didn't want the money. So that goes to show you that Chris is besides the big mouth that he uses to sell, and he's Brooklyn. So that's just comes with the territory. But he is definitely a true sportsman, cares about his peers and his of course, his teammates and his coaches. So, it was a pleasure to help him. And that's why he called me, because we've kept communications throughout those years. And for this fight, it was supposed to be his title fight. When he left camp helping me years and years ago, I told him if there's anything I can do for him ever, never hesitate. I'm there. So that's how this all transpired, right? And being that we kept in contact even when he fought my kid Arboleda and beat my kid. I hate losing. I would rather win for free than lose and get paid. And that's my philosophy, and that's how I am. And I hate losing. But that night when Jamie lost, I was both happy and sad. I was ecstatic for Chris, but I was pissed that I lost, right? But it's in a loss, I've never had that mixed feeling like that. And so, I really care about the kid. I think he's a great kid. I think he's going to do very well in the sport, and one loss is going to do absolutely nothing for him. He'll be right back.
And I think he posted on his social recently. He said, if anyone had it scored for him, they need to have their license revoked. So he had some humor to it. That's something you rarely hear from a fighter with that fighting mentality. And I'm sure he's going to be back. So I wanted to ask you about another fighter that you trained, Luis Ortiz. He started off the year with a bang. He got the knockout victory. Now, he did get dropped twice. What did you think about Luis Ortiz's performance against Charles Martin on New Year's Day?
I thought it started off as a C- and then worked its way up to an A-, right? So, Luis had been inactive, right, a little bit, and his last fight was a 10-second knockout or something, and then so the last real rounds he did was rematch with Deontay. So I think he was a little bit rusty in actually in being in a fight. Almost 2 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless of what you do in sparring, it's never the same. And then I believe that maybe Luis was thinking that the Charles Martin that he was fighting was the same Charles Martin that started boxing, that everyone was criticizing and everyone was kind of saying he sucks, right? And we can all say that about everyone who's getting started, so I believed that Charles was the best Charles Martin that we may ever see against Luis Ortiz. I don't believe that Charles took Luis lightly. No one does. They all train for their championship type fight when they fight Luis Ortiz. And Charles came in phenomenal shape, came ready to fight, was sharp, was on point, was looking very good. And it just took, it goes to show you that, Luis got dropped early on. One was a flash, maybe both flashes. No, the first one behind the head was a legitimate knockdown, but that jab just walking in, that one was more like a flash knockdown. But he definitely, got up and finished the job, which is what we want to see as a coach. You want to see that 2 knockdowns. You can get kind of derailed as a fighter and be like, oh shit, this is not going my way, and start getting desperate. Luis stayed true to what he's doing. Shook off the ring rust, started paying attention a little bit to the corner advice, and then got going. And then I knew that he would make the connection. Luis is a phenomenal counterpuncher and very tactician when he's placing his shots. He's not wasting them, and he's memorizing what you're doing as the rounds are going. He's memorizing your fidget. He's memorizing your eye twitch. Everything that you're doing while you're punching, there's a tail, and he's very good at picking it up, and he'll set you up with that same tail. So I thought, like I said, it started as a C-, and I think it worked its way up into an A- because we got the knockout. I believe that we probably could have done a little better had he started, the way he kind of took over in round 4, in the beginning of round 4, the ending of round 3, he started already to kind of show what we needed to do. But maybe that was just ring rust, shaking it off, and then we got the job done. But Charles Martin, I want to say Charles was at an A+, maybe an A-. Like I said, he looked sharp. He had an answer for everything Luis was trying to do. Clearly, it was a little sloppy in the beginning, so it was easy to answer. But others have failed, so and even sooner. So I think Charles looked fantastic. Can he get up again like that for somebody else? I don't know. I don't know if that's the new now and improved version of Charles and the team he's training with and whatnot. But I really liked what I saw from Charles. Clearly, I like better what I have with Luis, but I really liked what I saw from Charles.
Charles Martin now training with Manny Robles. We'll see where that partnership goes from here.
And he's a great coach, so I'm sure it's going to go well.
Yeah, absolutely. A great coach, great facility over there. You mentioned the knockdowns that Luis took, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because one thing I've seen with Luis Ortiz is when he gets knocked down, he sometimes has very interesting facial expressions. When he was knocked down, I believe it was the first time against Wilder, he kind of shrugged, looked around. There was one time he got knocked down by Charles, and he had a huge smile on his face when he got up. I mean, what was he trying to say there? Was he a little bit embarrassed, saying, hey, that was a flash, that didn't hurt me? What do you think he was trying to say?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I saw the same thing. And, I know when he's truly hurt, and he wasn't hurt. He was just probably a little bit embarrassed, maybe a little bit, like, hey, it's no big deal. Stop all that hollering, whatever was happening ringside. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't hurt. I knew it was a flash. even the first one that was a little bit like on the side of the head, behind the ear, that Lewis gave him. It wasn't like Charles illegally tried to punch back there. Lewis bent over for him, and then he just put it on the button. That one, I don't think Lewis was that affected at all. A little off balance because of the shot and recovered. But yeah, I think it was, no big deal. Let's just get back to work, as he showed. Just he was ready to go right back to work, and the night ended the way we needed it to end.
And speaking of Luis Ortiz's past, he's only lost to one man, Deontay Wilder. In the first fight against Wilder, obviously Ortiz had Wilder hurt in round 7. As Ortiz's coach, I'm sure that was the game plan there. Did you want to see the fight stop there? Do you think it should have been stopped there when Ortiz had Wilder hurt in their first fight?
Well, I've argued this and said this, and whatever. It's in the past now, but. I know that it would have been treated probably a little bit different had it been Wilder beating on Lewis for nearly a minute and 10 seconds, right? Because that's what Lewis was doing with Wilder, and snapping his head back and uppercuts and body shots and hard blows for over a minute, and everything but falling to your knees. But you don't need to fall to your knees to consider a stoppage, right? And the ref, the ref did his job to the point where he took in consideration that it's a world title fight, right? And you should let guys fight. And that's what he clearly did that. And Wilder prevailed, and you have that outcome. My big beef is in the rematch. When you have this history, now you have a guy that nearly knocked out the champion, was bettering in every single round until clearly he got tired and punched out, and then he got stopped of exhaustion. He got stopped of exhaustion in the first fight. It wasn't so much a devastating blow like Wilder does with everyone. Just fell to his knees of exhaustion. So now in the rematch, you got that history. I don't agree that in the first time Lewis goes down in the last 10 seconds, dominating every single round, winning every single round, that the referee called it off. I don't agree with that. There's history. This is still a championship fight. They've beat each other back and forth. There's no more time in the round. Let me do my job in the corner. Let us put him back together. If he's truly hurt, let us say, and stay close as a referee, stay close, and then see if there's a reason to stop it. But just to stop it like that, then that brings me back to the first fight. Why didn't they stop it when Lewis was pounding on him? So, whatever. We're not the world champion. That's why that happened, right? You kind of, not saying there's any foul play at all, but as a referee, you're kind of going in there protecting, the world champion. That's what you're looking out for, right? Is okay, let's, whatever. I guess. I don't know. I'm not a referee. I've never done it. So I couldn't even begin to think. I'm just saying that's what I see outside looking in now, And
to be fair, in that first fight, round 7, Ortiz did have Wilder hurt, but Wilder didn't go down at that time. Versus in the second fight, the moment you're talking about, where Wilder did land the big right hand, Ortiz did hit the canvas. He did look visibly hurt. Are you saying that you would have liked a chance for him to get a full count and possibly get back up to his feet there? He got back up to his feet. He got up before the 10 count. He put his hands up. Yeah, it was a little wobbly, but so what? There was no more time. The bell rang already, and so he would have said, fight, stop. That's exactly how it would have went. He would have said, okay, go, and then stop immediately because the bell had already rang. Let me go to the corner. Let him come to the corner. Let me ice him down. Let me slap him around. Let me decide. There's still a corner in there. Let me decide. It's a championship fight, the rematch with history. There should be some kind of weight to that. It shouldn't just be, okay, this is a guy who doesn't really belong here, and Wilder just flattened him. This is number 180th world-ranked fighter in the world. No, this is the best, in my opinion. There was the number 1 and number 2 heavyweight fighting each other. Why didn't you give the number 2 guy an opportunity to maybe go out on his shield, or maybe he recovers and he continues doing what he was doing for 7 rounds and wins a clear-cut great decision, you know what I'm saying, and becomes a world champion. So that's my beef, is that you did not give him the opportunity, being that he was on his feet. Yeah, a little wobbly, but so what? I got a minute to work, water ice, slapping him around, a great condition. That's why we're athletes. That's why we do what we do. They can recover in a minute from things like this, But clearly he did. If you watch the fight after he stopped the fight, I want to say within 30 seconds, if you watch the tapes,
you're going to see Lewis beating the shit out of the ring ropes and the ring corner pads, pissed as all hell, arguing with it. This is 30 seconds. You know what I'm saying? So a full minute of pit work on him. He's probably back in shape. He's staying away from that jab. I mean, he's staying away using it like he was winning, right? He got caught because he got comfortable. Maybe that was a wake-up shot, and he would have just went back to doing what he was doing. It's all in hindsight. It means nothing now. But, I don't agree with it.
We'll never know what would have happened had he had the chance to continue. Now, the one thing I want to ask you is as a coach, how do you balance giving your fighter that opportunity to go out on his shield? And then, of course, a lot has been made recently, as it should, about fighter safety. We had deaths in the sport. Yeah. How do you balance that in terms of knowing when it's the right time to send your fighter out into battle and knowing that it's enough to call a fight?
Well, it's the preparation. So, for example, if you don't have a fighter, number one, who's a dog, who can gut it out, then you should never consider it. Number two, if you have a fighter that's, for example, making weight and he's dehydrated for a week and a half to try and make the weight, and in 24 hours, there's no way you can rehydrate the brain to a safe status, then you should never consider that. And of course, if you don't have a puncher, and it's a dog of a fight and he's getting beat up and there's no puncher's chance to all that, then you shouldn't consider it, right? So in my scenario with Lewis, doesn't have to make weight, so I know he's not dehydrated, and I know that his brain is not in a very susceptible state like you would have with smaller guys who are making weight and dehydrated themselves to all hell, and then that becomes dangerous, right? And that's when you shouldn't allow that to happen. But I don't, even with my fighters that are making weight, do I ever get there. So I make sure that we diet down, that we hydrate down to weight. And if they can't do it, they're not in my camp, because I don't want that scenario that you're talking about in fighter safety. Their lives are in my hand, but it doesn't just begin fight night. It begins the whole time they come and they start prepping. So when they come to my camp for the very first time, there's a complete education course on how to make weight properly, how to stay hydrated properly, how to make sure that what you're doing is not potentially going to put you in danger. Fight night, you know what I'm saying? Cut it out, Kaya. Sorry about that.
And no problem. And just a couple of other questions before I let you go. So we spoke about Luis Ortiz. In terms of his future, he's 42 years old now. How much longer do you think he will compete in the heavyweight division at a high level?
Well, he's 42, but he's 42 young. He hasn't really been, like, other than Wilder, he hasn't really been in a war, right? And even with Wilder, it wasn't a war. The first fight was more of a war than the second fight. The second fight, he was beating Wilder, and then he got dropped, and then the referee stopped it, right? So it's one shot. Hold on, let me see what the dog's bitching about.
Oh yeah, no problem.
What's your beef? What's your beef? What are you doing? Barking at a damn mosquito. So in that fight, like I said, he just got dropped, and then that was it. But it wasn't like he got pounded for 12 rounds and then he got stopped. That wasn't the case. Will he fight on? Yeah, he's still in good shape. He's a healthy 42. He really takes care of himself. He learned and took to heart, how we work and how we stay healthy, and he lives a healthy lifestyle. He's got a family, and that, he's not out partying, drinking, smoking, and then trying to take all that off in 4 weeks, Oh, I know what she's barking at. Stop it, Kaya.
And one last question for you before I let you go. So I know that you work with a lot of fighters. Who else are you excited about that you're working with, and who are you looking forward to seeing back in the ring?
Well, I'm really excited about Michelle Ali. He's a 135-pound prospect, and he's about to break. He's at that breaking point where he's going to definitely, contend for a world title. And I know why, because of all the fighters that are, not wanting to fight him and trying to price themselves out of fighting with him. So it's becoming difficult. And anytime that starts happening, that's the telltale sign that something great is going to happen. When you can match a fighter, no problem, with 50 guys on a list and all 50 want to fight him, you're not there yet. When 50 guys are on the list and 49 of them are saying they'll fight for 100,000 over budget, you got something special. And that's clearly what's happening with Michel right now. And he fights March 26th. Opponent still to be determined from what I just explained, but they're probably zeroing in on somebody right now. And then Lewis, we're looking to get Lewis back in the ring, maybe April or May. Again, no opponent yet. And, being 42 and competing for the world title twice and coming up short, you would think that he would have a little bit more of a line of people wanting to fight him in the top level, the guys that make sense, because there's a lot of guys that will fight him, but it doesn't make any sense. We're not going to fight the young guns that are 25 years old, with zero upside to it with us. We've paid our dues. We've been doing this for some time with him now. And it's a stupid business move at this point to fight somebody just to fight and to quote unquote prove something to somebody. No, the fights that need to happen with Lewis are the top guys right now that are at the top, right? So the Furies and the Joshuas and the Ruiz and the Dylan Whites and all those guys. That's the fight merry-go-round that has to be taking place with these core guys. They seem to leave Lewis out of the playground and out of the mix still to this day. They talk a lot of shit that, he's old, that he's this, that he's that, but they don't get the mix with him. They won't play in the same sandbox with him. So, Wilder's the only guy. Wilder's been the only guy. And then Charles Martin. And that's why I'm saying I got to give much respect to Charles, not only for his performance and how well prepared he came, but accepting the fight, make no mistake about it. We didn't take the fight versus Charles Martin. Charles Martin accepted the fight to fight Luis Ortiz. Nobody's really at that time was running from Charles Martin, and evading Charles Martin. He accepted us. And then that's where it's at. So, I'm excited for Michel. And then I got a couple of guys that are right beneath Michel in that prospect young contender status. Got a really good Cuban, 147-pound, 5-0 with 5 knockouts, who shortly, be making some good waves. And so it definitely is going to be an exciting year. Carlos Negron, I got a 6'5" Puerto Rican heavyweight, 25-2, I believe, or 25-3. Looking to fight also in April or May, maybe even on the same card as Lewis, but he's very exciting. His only, loss where was Dominic Brazil in a fight that he was definitely doing very well, maybe winning by a few rounds and then got caught. So he's exciting now to because in that time he was kind of back and forth from Puerto Rico, and now he's been here for close to 2 years. He made Miami his home, he made the gym his home, and so that always makes a difference. It's never the same when you're kind of back and forth and not really just focused 1,000% on the craft and the lifestyle. Anytime that it's 50% or even less, sometimes some guys give the sport 30%. And it's 70%, everything else, which could include just normal life, right? And that's cool, right? But not for boxing. It doesn't work. If you don't give it 100% and 100% sacrifice, if you're a happy fighter coming up, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, absolutely. You're 1,000%, you're doing it wrong. You have to be very angry. You have to be very, for want. You can't have, you got to be needing everything if you're a young fighter coming up. If you're a young fighter, and this is for the managers out there, if you're giving your young fighters absolutely everything that they're asking for and they need for nothing, then no, it's not a hungry fighter. And it really, really is the sometimes the deciding factor of whether or not a fighter is going to do something or not. If they need nothing, especially poor guys that have not had and don't know, now they have this, they don't know that it could be better. For them, that might be the top of the hill, So sometimes the managers and their own teams ruin a potential great fighter by, in their head, thinking they're doing the right things. And that's just overindulging a young fighter or young prospect. Some guys are going to do it regardless. You can put them on a mountaintop with everything they want, servants and everything, and they just have a little bit of an ego and some pride in what they're doing, and they want to be the best. But that's a small percentage.
Herman Caicedo, I want to thank you so much for the time, for breaking it down. Appreciate your perspective. Best of luck with all the fighters that you're working with, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Likewise. Thank you for having me on.